Welcome back to the Response Drivers Podcast, where we feature top marketing minds and dig into their inspiring stories. Learn how these leaders think and find big ideas to push your results and sales to the next level. Now, let's get started.
Hey, I'm Rick Rapé, host of the Response Drivers Podcast. Here I dive deep with marketing experts and innovators to learn how they approach targeted marketing and use data-driven strategies to acquire and retain customers. We'll talk about what's working, what's changing, and how we can stay ahead in an evolving marketing landscape. Response Drivers is brought to you by RPM Direct Marketing. RPM helps companies develop hard-hitting direct mail and utilize advanced testing and targeting methodologies to reach customers and prospects. Our goal is to fully optimize your marketing performance to drive more sales and exceed growth expectations. RPM delivers smarter, more profitable direct mail solutions so you can turn your direct mail programs into a predictable, efficient sales channel. Check out rpmdm.com to learn more. My guest today is Mike Rosenberg. Mike is the Vice President of Marketing at Columbia Credit Union, where he leads marketing strategy, engagement, and high-impact marketing initiatives. He's a results-focused marketing executive known for driving growth through bold, integrated campaigns and pragmatic, forward-thinking leadership. He's also a Portland Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree, recognized for his modern approach to brand building. And outside of work, he's a family guy who loves traveling, skiing, and squeezing in a round of golf whenever possible. Thanks so much for joining me today, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Appreciate it.
Well, take us back to the beginning. What first got you interested in marketing?
Okay. So I guess it kind of has to go all the way back. Kind of one of those, at some point it was rare people who, went into the field that they studied. I was an undecided underclassman at the University of Oregon, and they had this new program that was in the business department, which I was already going towards, business administration, called an emphasis in sports marketing. I was a participant and fan of sports and thought that would be a pretty cool thing to do. This was before it was actually a minor or a major, and was an emphasis. So really my interest started there. And, when they piled the marketing into the sports piece of it, it's kind of made it a little bit more interesting for me. So that's where my sort of marketing origin starts. Did sports marketing for a while, and then kind of transitioned into more of the digital side as we move forward.
Well, when you look back at your early career, was there a specific moment that you realized, like, this is for me, I'm really good at this marketing thing?
I suppose so. I was in marketing and in quote unquote sports marketing for a long time, but also on the sales side of that for quite a bit. So I started out at our sports commission, which, our purpose there was bringing events and franchises and quality of life stuff for the economic impact. Right. And so we were really out there getting events, trying to get them in. One of the events we got in early 2000 was the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. We were looking for someone to run that, and I probably underqualified, but foolishly raised my hand, and they foolishly picked me to do it. And then that kind of transitioned to, yes, I was managing the marketing of it, but that was also, the event production and managing the staff and really creating this event that was the Olympic qualifier, second largest event viewership to the NFL. Figure skating was back in the early 2000s. So if you remember back what was going on, a lot of controversy, huge sport at the time. So there was definitely marketing there, and I learned a ton. Learned a lot about the sponsorship side and the sales side of sports marketing and of marketing in general. And that kind of took my path, that it was still marketing, sports marketing, but as much so on kind of the revenue, like direct revenue generation side. So sponsorships, ticket sales, stuff like that. Did that as a consultant for a few years after that event, and really had that pull back into the marketing side of it, right? Was approached by a friend of mine who was starting a SEO agency, a search marketing agency at the time. And this was in like 2006, where, 20 years ago, that wasn't much of an industry. So, we had conversations about, well, how are we going to do this? Like, we don't know. It hasn't really been done before. And so not only really the draw there was the marketing of that company and helping build that company,
Mm,
And we did that, and we did that to an acquisition, which was the goal of it. And from there, I enjoyed the helping others with their marketing in a silo, which was search marketing. But then kind of wanted to expand a little bit into other types of marketing that I had done before. And so joined an agency then that did more on the PR social content side.
mm,
And doing the marketing for that agency, we did marketing for clients, but actually a lot of the things that I took on was the marketing for that agency. I just really, realized that, the stuff that we did was really good, got good results. And so I guess there's some time in there kind of went, yeah, this is a field for me. I'll stick with it.
And how did you transition over into credit union or financial marketing?
Yeah, so there was a point in time where I kind of worked myself out of job there. The things that we had brought on enough people to do the day-to-day stuff that I was doing, and kind of looked around and decided that I wanted to change and looked at the types of clients that we had, and credit union, that industry was one that was very appealing to me.
Hmm.
I liked that it's quote unquote real business. It's buttoned up, it's proper, but it's also got a huge community aspect to it. And community has always been a really big thing for me. Serving on
Mm,
nonprofit boards. I'm a member of the Rotary Club here, so giving back has been something that's important to me. So when I was looking for, going to work for somebody else, that was really important. It's a kind of real business, but also had that community piece to it. So, and had done work with credit unions on the agency side. So kind of understood what they were all about, which was
gotcha.
important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the marketing work that you do for credit union, for Columbia Credit Union now, what are the biggest challenges that credit unions face marketing today?
Oh boy. There's quite a few. I think it's probably not necessarily the first ones might not be unique to credit unions, but it's just in general, right? You have a million different things you can do, a million different tons of different channels, different strategies you could go down, limited resources. Um,
Hmm.
New tools, lots of new tools out there. What do you need to spend your time and your team's time and energy focusing on?
Mm,
And what's going to drive results? And are you measuring the right things? I
mm,
think that's one of the big challenges that credit unions have had, and there's other industries that you know uh, everybody's got limited budgets, limited bandwidth, limited team, and how do you stack all those up to make the most impact, as well as how do you make sure you're moving the right needles, right? Going back to I guess kind of the old days, are you measuring engagement? Are you measuring for us, are we measuring deposits and loans, conversion, lifetime value, different things like that, and being able to know that there's some places you're going to get there relatively easily, and other times you're going to have to figure it out as you go to know what to market towards.
yeah. Do you think that you're competing more today with traditional banks or with fintech companies? How do you think about the competition?
Yes, and to an extent,
Everybody?
yeah, kind of. The one group that we tend to take off the list is other credit unions. In the credit union world, for the most part, we're like, hey, as long as if you're with a credit union, we're happy. I mean, we really believe that everybody should be based on, we're providing value to our members as opposed to shareholders, that the whole ethos of the credit union world. So
Hmm.
yes, we definitely look at, sort of the big banks or the national banks as competitors, and we are, we're competing at the product level for different types like that.
Hmm.
Most people have relationships with more than one financial institution now, for sure,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
So that's the other thing. They'll, depending on what it is, whether it's their checking account or different loans that they have, their investment services, right? We
Hmm.
have services and products in all of those spaces, and so we're
Hmm.
competing with different folks in those different places. And you also mentioned the fintechs, right? So we have lots of fintech partnerships. We also
Hmm.
have competition there, right?
Hmm.
So that's it, it's always a balance. And we also need to figure out where it is that we fit. What is our target audience? What does our target member need from us that
Hmm.
maybe a big bank or even a fintech can't give to them, right? So one of the things that we've found that we always get high marks on is our service. right? It
Hmm.
kind of goes back in that, do you need to go into a branch? Some people do. Lots of people
Hmm.
don't. So we need to be able to compete on the fintech side or even the big bank side of having all
Hmm.
of the digital tools that that person needs to be able to bank from anywhere.
Hmm.
However, we also know that whether you go in or not, people like to be able to go in, to know that there's a branch somewhere within their community that if they do have a problem, hopefully they never will, hopefully they won't need to go in. I've
Hmm.
been into our branches many times in the last 3 years, but not for a banking need, right? The time that I've actually needed to go into a bank, maybe you need to exchange some currency because you're taking a trip, or maybe there's a fraud piece that you want to go and see some money.
Hmm.
But so to answer the question, it really depends on
Yeah.
which aspect of it, and we find it everywhere. It's also geographics, right? Depending on where you're located for a credit union, what your field of membership can be, because we have restrictions in that capability, right? Folks who live
Hmm.
in Florida, for example, not automatically able to become a member of Columbia Credit Union. So.
Are there any requirements to becoming a member, or is it limited, or is it completely open? How does that work?
Yeah, so quick backstory for when credit unions first started, we're 70, almost 75 years old, and there's others that are older. They were usually started based on a field of membership. Like we came out of the
Hmm.
railroad, right? So it's a group of people who got together and said, let's pool our money, basically, and
Hmm.
we'll lend it out when we have excess, we'll lend it out to those who need it, and when they do, we'll go back. And over
Hmm.
time, most of the field of membership requirements have evolved into location,
Mm.
right? So whether it's a federal credit union that is national, you just need to live or work in the United States, or like for us, we are a Washington state chartered credit union. So anyone in the state of Washington, plus the four northernmost counties of the state of Oregon. So
Gotcha.
basically, Portland area, greater Portland area in the state of Washington is for us. But others have different fields of membership, and most of them now are just based on geography, and that's live work. There's exceptions if you have family there, those
Yeah.
sort of things. So it's
Interesting.
pretty easy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty
Thank,
easy.
well, thank, thanks for explaining that to me. I want to come back to something you said a minute ago about marketing channels, and there's so many options today. What are some of the marketing channels that have been most effective for you at acquiring new customers?
Yeah, so a combination, right? I think that what we found the most effective thing is, I wouldn't say being in every channel, but being very targeted and very direct about which channels and then who we're targeting, right?
Mm.
So, and it's something that I think every marketing team to some extent struggles with.
Hmm.
And I think we do it better than some, and there's probably other folks who do it better than us, but we have a lot of data, right? We have a lot of data about our members. We can get a lot of data about folks who aren't our members, and use the things that we find are most effective is when we use that data, and whether that's demographic data, psychographic data. We build profiles for different types of products. So taking
Mm.
those into account when we're targeting folks. So
Hmm.
one of, I think, the most successful campaigns we're doing right now is really a member acquisition direct marketing campaign, right?
Hmm.
And those channels include direct email, social, display, and direct mail, right? So
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
you're laying the foundation so that we're making sure that they see about us when they're on the internet doing whatever it is they do. If they're on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, making sure
Hmm.
that and showing those to the folks that, based on our data, have a propensity for that product.
Right.
Right. Obviously within our field of membership too. So there's some plus
Hmm.
and minus to all that, right? Especially when we talk about budget, when we're doing whether any sort of digital or any, direct mail type stuff, we're already bringing our audience down. So I mean that's a pretty easy one.
Hmm.
But making sure that we're getting enough with new member acquisition. I don't remember at some point it was, you need 15 touches before a sale or whatever. I don't know where that is today. It's probably higher or lower than that depending on what channel you're in. I don't know. But just making sure that you're hitting that you're making sure that you're in front of that target
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
in the channels that kind of that they choose, right? So we're probably hitting most of them in all of those channels, but not everybody is going to be in all of them. Not everybody's on Facebook, that sort of thing. So uh,
And you're going after each channel with a targeted audience in mind and not trying to blanket and hit everybody with every message. That makes a lot of sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at, we have lots of propensity model stuff, and then we'll do lookalike audience, right? We
Hmm.
according to, and we have, 25% to a third of the households in our market. So when we look at ours, and then we'll mirror that to, what does this demographic look like that's
Hmm.
not a member? Well, if our members in this demographic like our high yield checking account and CDs, well, it probably makes sense. It'll tell us that they will, and then we'll follow it back and make sure that was the case,
Yeah.
and it works.
The capabilities of doing predictive lookalike modeling have really come a long way in the last few years. We've had great success with creating them for our clients, and really found huge breakthroughs in performance based on applying predictive lookalike analytics to
Yeah.
their market. That's great. Well, this show is focused on direct marketing, so we obviously are very interested in, and we're RPM is very focused on direct mail. Um, you already talked a little bit about how data influences the campaigns that you run. What metrics matter the most to you when you're evaluating your marketing performance?
Yeah. Um, Ultimately, sales, right? So, new member
Probably
acquisition.
an
Do they,
important metric. Yeah.
yeah, do they take out, do they take out a loan, or do they apply for a loan? And
Yeah.
do we fund the loan?
Hmm.
Do they become a member? Do they open a checking account? Do they hold a balance on it? So
Hmm.
ultimately, we're wrapping it back into that.
Hmm.
Along the way, of course, depending on what the channel is, open rates, starting, again, an online application, we're able to see each step through. Are we
Hmm.
getting, are we making it easy for them to start the application, right? We can we
Hmm.
can we can judge that. Are they making it
Hmm.
through the steps? Where are they dropping off? Why are they dropping off? So
Yeah.
all of those ultimately will help us increase that end number, um, and making sure that we're meeting folks where they are. Um,
Hmm.
we still also have some of the old school stuff, especially on the direct side. We'll include a QR code so we can see if they're going to start their journey that way digitally, but they can also
Hmm.
go search, and hopefully we're hit. That's the other side is if they're going to go search, hopefully we're going to hit them. Not only will they find us, but
Yeah.
we might show them more reasons why they should join us while they're in their decision journey.
Hmm.
We even have, we even still keep it anecdotal enough too to know when people are bringing in a direct mail piece and saying, "Hey, I got this."
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
we aren't constantly, but we go down the route when we're doing a promotion or an offer, of doing a good old referral code,
Hmm.
especially when it's, a high value offer where they're getting, a cash incentive to open account. We want to tie that directly to actually the person that we're sending it to, right?
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
that's assuming that they actually bring it in, right? So whenever you bring that type of, it isn't that complex, but complexity into it, then
Hmm.
oftentimes you'll get the, oh, but I forgot the mailer, or somebody maybe is, if they don't come in through the QR code and it automatically puts a code in there, someone in a branch is typing it in. Well, it's really easy to miss an X for a G or whatever it is. So making
Hmm.
sure that, and as a service organization, we want to, if someone lets us know, hey, I used the code but we messed it up, we're not going to say, oh, whoops, sorry, because on the back end we know, right? It's
Hmm.
it's it's attached to their name already. So
Hmm.
being able to do kind of old school plus new school in that capacity is very helpful.
Yeah, making sure that you have proper attribution to the right channel is so important to being able to evaluate the effectiveness of what you're doing
Yeah,
and make good decisions moving forward, right?
right.
Um, are there any surprising insights you've discovered through studying and looking at all the data?
Oh my gosh. Yes. It seems like almost every day. I just replied back to one of our partners on an email. We were in a meeting with a partner, and I said, I don't think that, I don't. Yes, it was one of those where we're sort of turning the knobs, and one channel was, or one product was performing particularly well, right? And it was like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's performing well, but is it at the detriment of this other product? I'm not sure that we really want that. And then went back and talked to that business line and looked at the data and went, oops, followed up with, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It
Mm.
happens. Actually, please do turn that back up,
Mm.
because the data was surprising.
Mm.
Um, I think that it happens more often than not that when you follow the data, I feel like you're going in the right way. But
Hmm.
sometimes, yeah, we get fooled. But I think that's the reason that you continue to look at it and validate it on an ongoing basis, and hopefully having a relatively easy way to do that, at least in snapshots, and then you can dive in when something kind of raises the eyebrow, and you're like, what happened there?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're very in touch with the data and what's happening in the you've made all this data accessible and easy to work with,
We
which is
try
really,
to. I
really
mean,
good.
yeah, I'd like it to be better.
Hmm.
We still have it in lots of different places. I think that,
Hmm.
I'm sure it's not unique to us or our industry, but when you have, I mean, we're a relatively small team, so we partner with other organizations and other
Hmm.
agencies and um, technology partners, and they aren't all. Not all the data goes into one place. Like that's the goal, and where I'm trying to steer us towards. But
Hmm.
they also sometimes say different things, which you're like, how
Hmm.
is it? It's data. It's not supposed to say different stuff. But if the classic on for a financial institution is, when you're talking about loans, are you talking about when it funded, or are you talking about when it was approved? It just,
Yeah.
and data will change how many loans came in or what the balances are, different things like that. So
Yeah.
it's a constant struggle. We don't have it figured out, but um,
Yeah.
we know it's important, so we keep working on it.
I was just working with a client yesterday and a consultant an outside consultant firm that they hired, and we were all looking at the same data, and the three different organizations came to three totally different conclusions, all looking at
That's
the
a
same
really good
data.
point,
And it
right?
was like, oh, okay. I guess we got to wrestle and figure this one out here.
Yeah.
It was a
It also
little
depends how
challenging.
you interpret the data, right?
Totally.
What
Yeah,
does this
totally.
mean?
Three different ways of looking at it came to three really, really distinctly different conclusions about how we should go out with direct mail and the cadence that direct mail should be sent out at, and how the targeting should be done. It was just completely apples and oranges. Yeah, it was very
Yeah. So
interesting.
what do you
But
do in that situation? Come to a
well,
consensus or
I try to understand where their point of view and where they're coming from, and if I can learn something, great. I am definitely not going to be closed-minded to other people's ideas
yeah.
in that situation. And then I think, it's also important for me to share my point of view and how I looked at it. And I mean, I'm basing a lot of what I do on 30 plus years of experience in direct mail. And, you know, I've sent out billions of pieces of mail and done a lot of testing over the years. And I want to defend my point of view and my approach
Sure.
as well.
Yeah.
So, and then we just obviously the client ultimately gets to make the final determination about what they want to do. So, yeah, we're working through it. It's definitely makes things interesting.
Right. That's kind of the
Yeah,
fun part.
yeah, that is the fun part for sure. Um, well, you've already talked a little bit about integrated marketing. I was going to ask you what integrated marketing means to you today, but I think you've already sort of talked about that a little bit. The importance of surrounding your prospect with all the different channels so that they see you in whatever channel they prefer to look at and to interact with and engage with.
Yeah, ideally, right? Making, meeting folks where they are, making sure
Yeah.
that you're, providing the solution to their problem in the place that it starts that conversation. If you're talking about acquisition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, people are going to be in the right state of mind to make a change or to do something different or new in different
Hmm.
places. So yeah, making
Yeah.
sure that you're there, and ideally being able to make it easy, and
Mm-hmm.
channel is part of that. That predictive piece is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you got to balance the creepy side. I think it's still there a little bit, but I think for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
people get it. Like,
Yeah.
we're just trying to help.
How do you balance short-term marketing performance with building long-term brand equity?
Hmm. Um, I think just making sure that we have that brand equity in mind all the time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that it's we do things the right way
Mm-hmm.
in pretty much everything. I mean, not pretty
Mm-hmm.
much in everything. We do things the right way and make sure that we're executing on the mission of the organization. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, we're in a position where we're trying to make life better for our community and for our folks, and provide financial wellness. And we think that we're creating the right products and tools to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes it's about prioritization more than, I guess that's kind of how I think of the short term, long term, is to make sure that you're continuing to do the things um, that keep the lights on when something shiny comes in the room.
Mm-hmm.
We still spend, we're going to spend some time, energy, and effort on the new things because the new things eventually might become standard.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about direct marketing and direct mail. Like that's a old school standby that has been very, very successful for the credit union industry. So, if we
Mm-hmm.
got too distracted in, something new in social or influencer or AI SEO and weren't taking care of that brand, making sure that we're in the market and that the folks still know that we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the credit union side, a big piece of it too is we're not all about acquisition, right? We're about taking care of the folks that we currently have too. It's a
Mm-hmm.
constant because everybody else is trying to acquire them, bring them
Mm-hmm.
over, especially when you're talking about being the preferred one. So having that checking account where, it's
Mm-hmm.
your payment center and your direct deposit paycheck goes into. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so making sure that we're always meeting their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, letting them know about the things that we have that maybe they don't have, or, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, one of my favorite things that we do on a kind of regular basis is we'll look at, so we have different types of checking accounts, right? One that earns high interest on it and one that doesn't. Neither one has fees. There are a few reasons that folks would be in the one that doesn't earn interest, but really it may just be that they signed up for before we had it, or their
Mm-hmm.
situation has changed, and so we'll put together a list of those members to reach out to say, hey, there's a better product for you. Does that
Yeah.
benefit? Like now we're going to be paying interest on the deposits in that account, which we want our members to do better, so that's great, and get them in the right account. So
Mm-hmm.
long term, that's more likely to make them stay longer, and maybe have us be higher in the wallet, as they like to say, or as we like to
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
But making sure that we're always taking care of the folks that are kind of already in the house, uh,
Yeah.
as we're inviting more folks in.
So you do quite a few customer focused marketing campaigns probably throughout the year to
If not as many, if not more.
okay.
Yeah, and we were talking about what we know about when we do prospecting. I mean, we know that much and more about the members that we have. And
Mm-hmm.
so making sure
Mm-hmm.
that when we know what we know, let's use that to make sure that we're providing them extra value. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we added in like financial counseling services and credit score monitoring and
Mm-hmm.
retirement readiness stuff to our digital banking. All of that with, okay, these are going to be great services for our members to be able to use and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they're continuing to prosper. So yeah, it's really important.
That makes sense. Um, if you had to grow a credit union tomorrow from 0 members, what would be some of the first things that you would implement
Oh boy.
to grow the
Uh,
business?
well, back to that data being everywhere kind of thing would
Yeah.
be to start with really figuring out where all the metrics are going to live and what
Mm-hmm.
they're so that you can maybe start today, tomorrow, or whatever, having it all in one place. I feel like to some extent that would, outside of not having any members, not
Mm-hmm.
having any money, probably that would be kind of a dream, is to start from zero of like, here's how we're going to build it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the marketing tech stack that we want, right?
Yeah.
And just go from there as opposed to, well, we're not changing this. So
No
how do we,
legacy
build
systems
upon
to
it?
slow you
Yeah.
down.
I mean,
Yeah.
that would be kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it,
I
the
feel
thing
like
that I
marketing
said,
and IT are always kind of like butting heads because marketing always needs more tech tools and IT's like, wait, we can't support all this.
everybody needs more tech tools. So it's like, yeah, get in line.
Yeah. Yeah. What marketing tactic do you think is underrated right now?
Mm. Well, I got to give a shout out to the direct mail. With
I
RPM
pre
being the sponsor,
I, I appreciate direct mail. I hope it's productive for you.
it is. I
If
mean,
it's not
I think
working
I
hard,
mentioned this.
we can help.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that, especially in the credit union space, we see great returns from it all the time.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that was a surprise to me
Mm,
coming into the industry. When I heard about how much direct mail we did, I was like, wow, really? And then I saw the stats. I was like, okay, well, we're
mhm.
not going to stop that. I'm not going to be the guy, the guy that comes in and cuts the one that way. And as I talked about for acquisition, it's also a great tool for us for our current members. Again, that making sure that they know, the other products that we have. It amazes me how many times I've heard internally. We have a home loans department. How many people, member facing staff are like, yeah, they didn't know we did home loans. It's like,
Mm,
well, yeah, okay. So then I go back to, well, how have we marketing not positioned it so that they see that? But it's
yeah.
one of those things, right? People see it as one thing, and maybe you do some other stuff. So that's definitely a good channel for us.
Well, it seems
And
like we all hope that we build this brand and that consumers remember it and keep it in mind and they always remember what we've tried to teach them. But realistically, they don't really keep it in mind. They kind of go with whatever marketing is flowing at them at that moment.
yeah,
It takes their attention away.
yeah, it does.
Sorry, you were saying about the other underrated. I cut you off. I think you were still talking about underrated tactics.
Oh no, I think the good one to focus on is that direct mail piece. Um, to know, I'd have to know what they're rated to know if they're underrated.
Mm,
I feel like we're to some extent doing most of them. I don't know if they're underrated or
yeah.
not. No, are
Well,
there?
it sounds like you've got a really good data-driven approach and you're working to optimize each channel and make them perform to their peak performance, right? I think
We're
that's
trying.
the important part.
Yeah, yeah.
What excites you most about the future of marketing?
Hmm. I mean, I think kind of the unknown. Um, you know, uh, Being able to continue to use the data that we have,
Mm,
being able to kind of continue to try out new things.
hmm
As I mentioned when I was telling you about my background, I got into the search marketing when it was like, how do we do that? We don't know. It hasn't been
mm,
done.
mm,
Um, there's stuff coming with AI in that capacity. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's the AI search kind of stuff, but it's going to continue to evolve,
hmm
and that's definitely an unknown. I can't imagine that, your chat GPT, Gen AI type stuff, the way that people are finding products and services isn't going to continue to go that route more,
hmm
but I don't know, right? We didn't have this a few years ago. And everybody talks about how everything's changing rapidly, even more rapidly. So,
Yeah.
that can be scary and exciting at the same time. So, I like figuring out what's next and keeping a beat on that as much as appropriate too. I think we can
hmm
also, as I mentioned, we can look at that shiny thing and spend a whole bunch of time on something that may not have the impact, but knowing that it's there,
hmm
and being prepared and starting to test on it, I think is an exciting place for us to go.
Yeah, we definitely have to stay on the cutting edge, but the we see a lot of clients that chase the latest greatest sort of new hack, uh, and then everybody else does the same thing, and it creates this really crowded space after everybody gets there. And so, you know, it's an interesting dynamic. You want to be on the cutting edge, but then not late to the party and not
Right.
not over the
Fast
top with it.
followers, I think, is the term that some use.
Yeah, right, right. If someone wants to build a career like yours, and be successful as a marketing leader, what advice would you give to them?
Uh, Keep learning. I think is really a big piece of it.
Hmm.
I think that I was fortunate to get involved with like a marketing trade association relatively early in my career, and joined the board, and then went on to be the president and get involved in that group of people. The organization put on monthly educational events and a yearly conference, and the content that I got out of that was great. Um, but really the talking with peers and meeting new people at those kind of events, and understanding, hearing what they're working on and what they're doing, and continuing to be curious. It's super easy to find, it's way easier now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago to find information about a topic and, go watch a video, or ask your buddy chat what's going on here. Trust but verify, or actually we probably don't even trust yet. Definitely verify. But yeah, just stay thirsty with knowledge. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that is the thing that propels people in their careers. We talked about that next new shiny thing is you don't necessarily have to be doing it, but understanding what's going on. So that being the person who maybe says, "Hey, what if we try this?" Right? And then having the gumption to be the one who, not, "How about you guys go try this?" but "How about we, or can I, or we should all lead us in trying this new thing."
Hmm.
I think that's something that, if you want to build a career and be successful in anything, is just staying curious.
Yeah, open-mindedness. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, boy, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you for being so open and sharing your experience and your expertise. I really appreciate it. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Probably LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Rosenberg on LinkedIn. There's probably a few of them, but you can probably find me. That's
Gotcha.
just the best. Yeah,
Well, thank you again, Mike. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
That's a wrap for this episode of Response Drivers. Thanks for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you left a review. Got a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Just drop us a message at responsedrivers@rpmdm.com. Until next time, keep driving response and making your marketing work smarter.